All right. So it's Lindsay and Becky again. We're having
Hi.
we're having lunch and I feel like Becky and I, we've already just started today's conversation. I had to start, I had to be like, wait, let's stop and let's actually record. But a lot of real life is just happening right now. Like I had an idea of what I was gonna talk about today. Because
Mhm.
yesterday I was getting distracted with the maintenance man coming to install my AC. And then as you saw, I had to then wipe down the areas where he was. But shit. Oh yeah. Oh, I didn't mean to curse, but whatever. We're just in a time right now where maybe I'm not gonna always have my most professional voice, and that's okay. And why do I then have this energy today? I don't know how much detail I'm gonna go into because it's not necessarily my situation, but like no lie, a few minutes just because before, or I was already talking to Becky and we were about to hit record, and then one of my friends, I'll keep it general, but she told me that the guard called her husband because they want him. Well, I'm just trying to read this. I guess yeah, he's being sent to protest, and I think that's really all I have to say. Obviously, I already know other people whose loved ones might be on that side of the protest because maybe they're police officers or other first responders of some kind. But and so obviously I feel, I might be, who knows, I might be getting messages from her in this, or who knows, but
This is the unfiltered snapshot of what's happening in our life right now. You had
yesterday
a
it was the
your
maintenance man, like
yeah, your
I missed
blog
that.
title is perfect for what is happening, and this is the perfect format. This is working because we're documenting this very confusing, continually changing and emotional moment in history that I still stand strong in thinking this might be the moment. And I think it's because like I watched the recording before you posted it.
Oh,
And
right now we're in gallery view, by the way, or
okay,
because I and we'll experiment, but go on.
yeah, we don't know what we're doing. This is like it's an unfiltered attempt.
Okay,
um
okay. But yeah, you posted the video. Wait, which video?
so
How many videos now?
before
Okay.
you posted the video of our lunch yesterday, I watched the video because I wanted to make sure that like I didn't come off awful, right? Like because I'm still hyper nervous that I'm going to. And honestly, I'm at this point where if I don't try to have these uncomfortable conversations and practice figuring out how to say this stuff, then this is all for naught anyway. So anyway, after I watched the video, I watched myself try to justify why I wouldn't go demonstrate, right? Because I still feel awful that I didn't yet. And watching myself kind of deal with that conflicting emotion was literally, I think, what I needed to feel compelled to do something. So I am going to be going to the candlelight vigil that's in Manchester, New Hampshire tonight. Um, and yeah, I'm scared, but I'm also I need to do this. I don't have children that I have to worry about. My I don't have a job that I have to report to on Wednesday. Like I'm wrapping all my school stuff up. Like I don't have any more excuses, right? So I'm going to be doing something that I'm really nervous about, and I'm going on my own, which also makes me even more nervous, but I need to I need to get out of this bubble. And that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I saw you post about that, and I think you were asking other people if they wanted to join. I mean, I
I
remember my
got a lot of
reaction.
solidarity messages. I got a lot of PMs saying like, "Hey, if things get unsafe, you can come to my house." But I haven't had anyone agree to come with me yet, which actually hardens my resolve to go. Um and actually, before this call, I was telling Lindsay before we hit record, but I think I want to document this too. I was flipping through Spotify to find something to listen to while I took a shower, and I saw that Spotify put out a Black Lives Matter playlist. And I was like, all right, like, I don't listen to rap music. I don't listen to hip hop music. I don't listen to a lot of Black made music. There are Black artists that I listen to, but it's more like mainstream, which again, I hate saying mainstream because that's saying white in colored language or in fancy language. But a song started to play called Don't Shoot. And that song came out about 5 years ago after Michael Brown's death. And I was listening to the chorus that is a young girl singing, God didn't put us on this earth to get murdered. And the song is an incredible song. And it's such a call to arms. And it made me realize, Lindsay, why yesterday when we had this conversation, you were like, this has happened before. Like, this is not new. And I don't know why it feels different for me this time. I don't know, but I know that it feels different for a lot of people, and a lot of people with power. And I think that's what I think is different right now.
I mean, so right now my emotions are everywhere, whether or not you can see it in on my face or hear it in my voice. Like, again, you know, if I'm to go back to just me finding out about my friend's husband being called by the guard, he's the one person of color, or he's a person of color, and his entire unit wasn't being called to go to these protests.
So wait, he was the only person in...
Well, I don't know if he's the only, but I know that his whole unit,
specially selected.
Yes, a person of color in this unit being called by the guard to go that'll be about as much more as I'll say now, just because right now I'm so mother effing pissed. And I mean, like, here's the deal. I mean,
can I just say marketing? Like, again, marketing, I hate it.
Well, and I also just want
to... Do you get what I mean by marketing?
Wait, let me finish this thought. The reason that for me, it's not even just about the individual situation, but in this case, but when I'm hearing like, oh, like now we're getting the guard involved, like, then that means that he's not
the guard's been involved.
Country. Well, no, but I'm saying more so now. Because
each state has their own national guard, which I don't quite understand how the states have national guards, because if it's a national guard, I don't understand the structure of how it works.
So, you know, one of my exes was in the military, and for example, like, if there is a disaster in a state, like a, you know, a tornado, a hurricane.
But then why isn't it the state guard?
You know what? We might have to get someone who's more.
We'll do some research on that.
Like, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to call my ex for his expertise, but we can do research. But
sometimes you don't need to rely on your network. Sometimes you can go other ways.
We could Google. But yeah, no, but when you're okay, let's go back, just because right now the situation is what it is. When you say marketing, like, funny enough, my ex was in the marketing materials for I'm not gonna, so okay, how much do I say about my ex? Veteran who used to be in the Army, did 2 tours of Iraq, and then later switched to the Air Force, was a recruiter. So yes, like, there was marketing out there where, you know, he was the token Black dude in like a group of people of different races, like mostly men. I think there might have been a woman in the picture. I mean, and he was in like a video, at least one video, where they're just like they're all like just staring out into the horizon. But yeah, so that's what I think of when I think about marketing, just because I've had that personal connection. But you tell me about what you're thinking about with marketing.
What I'm thinking of is they're sending in the National Guard, right? And if the National Guard shows up and it's all white men, that's not going to go well. Like, you're not going to, that's just going to incite more of the anger and the hostility. And I I I hate to say that just feels like a, maybe it's well intentioned. Like, let's also play devil's advocate here. Maybe it's well intentioned because the National Guard is recognizing that if we send in a bunch of white men, that's not going to go well, no matter how this is going. It will not end well. And maybe if they send people from the National Guard, salud, that are working to change the system from within, hopefully, that will help show that while maybe the entire organization is not able to be supportive at this exact moment for whatever reason, but at least there are, because there are police that are kneeling with protesters. Like, that's awesome. And those images are so powerful, because my first strong mentor that I've had in my life in college, one of the things that he told me, because I wanted to go into politics, but I was very anti the idea once I started to realize how broken the system is, and not even broken, how poorly set up the system is. I just didn't want to be a part of that system, right? And he looked at me and he said, Becky, the best way to impact those systems is to work from within. And so maybe that's what the National Guard is doing by selecting him. I don't know, but I don't want to always think ill-intentioned things. I always like, I know, and your eyes are rolling right now for people who didn't see Lindsay's eye roll.
I didn't even know I was rolling my eyes. I was just looking off to the side where my water is.
Okay, maybe you're just looking at your water and I misread that as an eye roll.
Well, I mean, oh, this was not the vibe I had like 10 minutes before we did this.
Yeah, I know. And the thing is, the original conversation we were going to have is like comparing racism and cancer, right? Like, that's what we were thinking about talking about.
Well,
but let's just say racism is a cancer. So right now, Lindsay, what are you doing in your cancer treatment? Let's talk about that. Like, what are the steps you are taking to prevent the cancer that was in your body from coming back? Like, let's take this as an allegory.
Well, okay. Like, if we're going to rewind a little bit, so I think, obviously it was like reference to yesterday. For people who don't know me, a few months before the pandemic, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, which that a few months ago, like when, months ago, that was my hugest problem. And it's interesting. Like, I really didn't think things like a global pandemic. And I mean, I knew that there would continue to be racial tension in this country. Like, that wasn't, but we were at, like, at least months ago at that point. Like, I mean, there wasn't, well, actually there's always a story. So what the hell am I saying? But I just didn't know it would be this. Basically, so what I've been telling Becky and different people who've been asking me, like, oh, how's cancer treatment? La 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 la. And I could get more into my actual treatment, but what I've been saying is, right now, like, over the past few days, like, if I've cried, it's been about racism. And based on my experience with going through cancer treatment during a global pandemic, and during a time of, like, racial tension, racism is worse than cancer, because when I told people, hey, I have cancer, most people were just very quick to, like, be compassionate, say sorry, ask me how they could support me. No, like, when it comes to racism, I mean, I've experienced my own, but then obviously, what's going on is just, it's on a whole other level. I think that, and I don't think I'm just speaking for myself. I think for other people of color, and, especially Black people now, it's been, you have to, like, prove that you've experienced a certain threshold of racism for people to have compassion for you, for people to want justice for you. Like if you complain like, oh, you were called a racial slur, or someone, clutched on their purse when they saw you, or, I've been in situations where people have been surprised by how educated I was or where I got my education from. People might say, oh, in the grand scheme of things, that's not so bad. If racism were a cancer, like sometimes people look at those microaggressions and they think, oh, that's like stage 0, stage 1, like you can handle that. But guess what? When you're in the cancer world and someone finds out that you're stage 0, stage 1, they want to get that stuff out of you because they don't want it to continue and get worse. Like, I even know ever since I found out that I had breast cancer, I've met people who've said, oh yeah, cancer runs in my family. So, I got genetic testing. And well, for people who have resources, right? I recognize not everyone has that. So that's where.
Yes.
That's
yes. Because genetic testing is definitely not covered by many insurance companies. If you are lucky enough to have insurance.
So yeah, I don't mean to
and still have a job that provides you with insurance, because you may have just lost your insurance coverage because of the pandemic. Luckily, you still have your insurance coverage. Okay.
So I'm just saying, like, okay, so right now I know I'm talking about racism and cancer like they're separate, but yes, there are certain ways in which your identities will intersect with your experience with healthcare, beyond cancer care. So yeah, I think, and I actually said that, like, about half an hour before meeting with you, I had lunch with a colleague I know who works in another department. And I told that person that same thing. Like, racism is worse than cancer, because at least with cancer, people are more likely to have compassion for you. They're not going to ask you what you might have done, or if you misinterpreted something, like in the same way that happens with racism. And so, yeah, yeah, if you think about it, cancer does get treated as a health issue. Racism is a health issue. It's a public health issue. And I remember going to a conference back in November where that was like a major theme. But then I know that months ago, if I had told that to certain people, they might have, depending on who those people are, they might have pushed back on me. And right now there's just no way, like, at least in my personal circles, anyone could argue with me on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think, yes, like, okay, I'm a sociologist, so I know there are people who might argue and say, oh, well, race is a social construct. And yes, it's a social construct with real social consequences. And I don't know. Look, I was a sociology minor. I also minored in Spanish, and then I majored in international studies. And even before that, when I was younger, I was someone who was very mindful, very aware of these racial dynamics, just based on different places I've lived and seeing how they manifest themselves. So again, this is why, like yesterday, I was saying, this isn't new, like both for my own academic, but then also personal experiences, my lived experiences, really. That's what's informed me the most. And I just think, actually, as I've said that, the minute I said academic, I think also, and I think, so Becky and I have worked in academia together. We're so, I think sometimes we could be in circles of even the best intentioned people, where when they want to learn from the experts, it has to be that person with the PhD, with the master's, the one who has such and such certification. And I would also, in this process, really challenge people to redefine who they see to be an expert on this. Actually, when I was at that very same civic leadership summit months ago, in it was funny, we had people in the room who had very impressive resumes. There was some faculty member from MIT. Ayanna Pressley was there, because again, I live outside of Boston, and this summit was based in Boston. And I think a trend with these speakers is that they were trying to say, like, oh yes, I have such and such and such background, but just so you know, it's really my lived experiences that make me an expert. I just got such and such credential so that I could get into the room where the important decisions are being made. Like, no lie, I want to say at least 3 people said that. And I remember Ayanna Pressley she was actually referencing more of her personal experiences, you know, in jobs that maybe weren't seen as glamorous when she was speaking to the crowd. And again, I think it's because she knew what room she was in. She was in a room
Mm-hmm.
full of people that were community based, you know, people throughout Boston and greater Boston doing this work. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
think, I don't know if she would have said that. I mean, I don't know her personally, but I don't know if she would have said that in a different setting. But like, this was a setting where it's like, oh no, it's my lived experiences make me an expert.
So to that point, I can show you the exact opposite thing happening. So I was at a conference in January, and again, oh, what are you pointing at? There's something cool in the yard that I'm supposed to be looking at. It's unfiltered, right? My husband's using the smoker, and I'm really excited because I didn't know lunch was being made for me, but I can tell it's happening. But at this conference, one of the popular themes, and this was a conference for teachers of foreign languages, or again, I hate saying foreign languages, we're trying to change to world languages because that makes more sense than saying foreign. But a lot of the topics were on LGBTQ themes, specifically around gender non-binary language, things like that. And so I went to all of those workshops because I do identify with the LGBTQ community. And so I really enjoy being in spaces where I can see that there is work being done to help make schools more inclusive, and also to explore these themes and how are we going to be teaching them to our students, right? And exposing them. There's my husband. Say hi, Chris. So anyway, most of the people who were presenting were not LGBTQ. And they started off by saying, I am not a member of this community, and I invite people who do identify as part of this community to contribute to this conversation because I am here to show what I'm doing in my classroom to try, but this is not my experience. And so all of these conversations, which again, were largely led by heterosexual individuals and cisgender individuals, but people in the audience were standing up and sharing perspectives and ideas, and there was this exchange, and it was so beautiful, and it was exactly what I like to experience when I'm at a conference. I don't want to listen to someone narrate a story of what they did and it's not a two-way conversation. This was an interactive presentation, and it was almost every single one I went to, and it was amazing. And now I follow a bunch of those teachers on Twitter, and we're continuing the conversation and started a book club, and it's so in those spaces, if you are speaking as someone who is trying to elevate these issues, I think it's incredibly important to say and start off those talks by saying, I am not an expert in this field because this is not my lived experience, but this is what I've learned through my research. This is what I've learned from the conversations I've been able to have with people of this community that I'm trying to support. And if there are anyone in this audience who would like to take this conversation to the next level so that we can all learn more together, myself included, please have that conversation. And it was so cool. So I just wanted to show the other side of that when you're in a space where it is completely whitewashed heterosexual cisgender individuals, and they're trying to do something to elevate the issues of marginalized communities. It's all about that authenticity, because by saying I'm not an expert and this is not my issue, like I do workshops with teachers about helping support students with anxiety disorders because I have an anxiety disorder. And I want to make sure that teachers understand that it is not just sitting around and being worried. Like the student may look totally fine, but you don't know what's going on in here. And the kids sometimes don't understand either because they've never been given the language. So if you are someone like me who is trying to elevate issues of a community that is not your own, you can still do so by creating an environment where you can invite members of that community to share, and also by saying, these are the things I've learned. I don't know. Because it was so cool. I'd never witnessed that before, and it was so cool.
I mean, well, that most certainly didn't happen when I went to an international trauma conference last summer. And yes, it was led by mostly white cisgender males and all of that. But see, here's the thing. I think, actually, okay, I'm going to say this and then I'll have other things to say. I think though, okay, for maybe someone in your situation, or say you were in those people's situation, or like let's say around race issues and whatnot.
Okay, so let's imagine I'm giving a talk on race. Okay.
Well, I do think that, but also I want to circle back to the LGBTQ stuff because it's Pride Month. But
it is. Everyone's forgotten, and I also forgot.
No.
I noticed because it was on my Instagram feed. I totally forgot it was the start of Pride Month. So yay, Pride Month.
But it's okay. So I mean, I think it's also being mindful that, like, say for example, if you were someone who was being consistently asked to lead the conversation on this, lead the conversation on that, I would also say, like, if you told me this, then I would challenge you to, like, kind of question why you're the one who's being consistently looked to. Now, like, let's say if you were in a more diverse work environment, like, because right now I know that's not necessarily your situation, but if you were in a more more diverse environment, then maybe being mindful of, like, okay, why am I the one consistently being asked? Why isn't that, or say if the other
and simply saying that to my supervisor, if that would ever be the case, like, hey, this is not my issue. I'm happy to be part of the organizing committee. However, I feel this teacher is much better suited for giving this type of a talk. Like, and honestly, it feels so much more authentic, and people are so much more open to listening when one of my friends, who is a transgender educator, and she goes all over helping to support schools as they develop policies to make their schools more inclusive. She openly will say, inclusive policies for transgender students are going to have inclusive impacts for all marginalized populations. However, I cannot speak to how to improve the system that marginalizes African American, Black students, whatever that school district happens to be using as language to refer to students who are Black, because maybe they're afraid to say Black. But by inviting all of those people to the table, you were able to create a more equitable system. But how do you get everyone to the table?
I mean, this reminds me of something that I noticed. So I posted our video on my blog because I realized not everyone's on Facebook. Something that we didn't bring up yesterday was, like, okay, we were talking, like, obviously we're recognizing that there have just been a whole bunch of people in the Black community being impacted, being murdered, being injured in this. I did realize that we were focusing a lot on the male, like, seemingly, like, hetero, like, survivors. And so actually, even when I was, looking at just my social media last night, it's just thinking of, like, oh, like, it's the people who've been covered the most, even in this Black Lives Matter movement. Like, we're the trans women, we're the trans men, even the cis
Black trans women. I don't know the statistic, but there is some statistic out there that says Black trans women have the shortest life expectancy of anyone living in the United States.
So I don't have that on me, but I wanted to say, when I read some type of statistic like that months ago, it was like my age, I think. Like, I'm in my mid-30s.
And moreover, it's important to know that that statistic is only of people who self-report as being transgender, because so many people commit suicide in this country because of depression. And let's just say, it's really easy to get stuck in a depression when you don't see the possibility for justice in your community.
You know what?
So that number is drastically underreported. The amount of suicides that happen as a result of oppression. I mean, we're not even touching on that, but the PTSD of intergenerational violence and subjugation and systematic crime, and the looting that people are so up in arms about. And yes, there's a lot of looting that's taken on because there's people who are just taking advantage of the situation, be like, I'm gonna go steal stuff from Target and be crazy because I can be crazy because I'm in my 20s and I've lots of testosterone. But like, the people who are actually looting because they're angry about the system. Like, that's the least painful thing you could do, right? Is to take a thing when your parents were like, we got to make a change. And then your grandparents were like, we got to make a change. The system's broken. Then your great grandparents were like, yeah, back in my day, it was pretty broken too. And then your great grandparents have this awful story too. And you're like, oh my God, it's still the same as it was. Looting is I'm not condoning the looting. I almost said nuding, whatever, nuding. Nuding might not be an answer either, but
I mean,
I don't, the system is so broken, and
I mean, it's interesting because I think I've been hearing and seeing perspectives from people in my personal networks where it's funny. You hear the like, oh, I believe in protests, but they should be peaceful, not looting. But then I'm also hearing, okay, so I also know people who might be in communities where that stuff has happened and they just have those immediate physical safety concerns. And it's like, where the heck are they going to get groceries now? So I'm seeing both the people who are like, well, hey, what did you expect? I mean, I think people could also feel all of the feelings, right? Like I think it is possible, like, especially if you're someone who's living in one of those communities where like your businesses are like,
oh yeah,
if you're living in a community right now where like the businesses, especially the small businesses, got messed up. I'm just like, just so you know, I'm just trying to like look up the name of an organization. So for example, in my I'm originally from Chicago, grew up there, and one of the organizations is called My Block, My Hood, My City, and then they have a small business relief fund. And I did donate a little bit to it just because I'm not necessarily rolling in dough right now, but I wanted to support. So I don't know, even if someone might philosophically agree with why people may have chosen to loot, if you also are in that community, it's like, oh dang, like, what happened to my house or what happened to my local store?
yeah.
And I do think it is possible to feel all of those feelings right now.
Did you see that post circulating on Facebook? And it was store owners that are like clearly upset that their store or their restaurant has been destroyed, but they were like, we stand strong with this movement. And there was a whole bunch of those circulating, and I was like, yeah, I guess we haven't had anybody whose business was destroyed actually stand up and say this needs to stop. I mean, I haven't seen those posts. I've seen other people say this has to stop, but their store wasn't destroyed. So I'd be interested to talk to more people who have had their businesses directly impacted as a result of the looting or the burning or the destruction that has taken place. And again, I still don't believe that the majority of that is done by people who are actually protesting. I think that, again, I have no statistics to back that up. I don't know. I'm making a personal opinion statement there, but that's what I think. But there is definitely justified rage, and there is justified, well, again, I don't want to say justified looting because I don't want to say that, but I mean, I've been angry enough that I've hit a wall. I've been angry enough to do things that I do deeply regret. And I wasn't in a system of, I was in a system where I was systematically being treated poorly. It was in a not safe marriage that I was in. Not my current one. My current one's lovely. As my doctor asks every time I go in for a checkup, right?
Yeah.
Do they ask men if they feel safe in their relationships like they ask women? There's another weird conversation. Because every time I go into the doctor, they ask me if I feel safe at home. Do they ask men? I don't know. I need to ask my husband as our local man.
Maybe we need to include a willing man to like be in this conversation with us next time.
Yeah.
I mean, but I also think, I've been thinking, something that I said earlier, like a word that I was, and just so you know, I have to go to a work meeting soon because
so do I. We need to wrap up, and we're definitely off on tangents, largely due to me, because that's how my brain functions, because I have an anxiety disorder. So my brain jumps. That's so full transparency to those who are watching this, who are like, Becky's going all over the place. It's what happens.
Right now, I don't think people need to like have a an official anxiety disorder to feel that
Oh
way.
no. Oh
Um,
no.
I mean,
Definitely
did
not.
you
But
hear me?
those of us who are who do have anxiety disorders, everybody responds differently because anxiety manifests, listen to me, my weird accent there, manifests in so many different ways. But mine specifically causes my brain to just go from idea, and then I can't get anywhere because I keep jumping. So,
Well, and so what I wanted to also just point out is that with all of these stories that we're hearing in the news or maybe through our own personal networks, that idea of like compassion and empathy, and who do you just notice that you might just more naturally feel more compassion or empathy for? Because and I've seen this because again, I know people, different races, different types of occupations right now, and and I also come from more of a Christian upbringing, so there are people left and right asking for prayers. Maybe it's for themselves, their family, because they're in the communities being impacted. Maybe they have a family member who's, I don't know, in the guard, in the police, and they're going to be asked to like go to these protests, or or the riots, if that's what it is. And I guess just if this is a country where there is so much focus on thoughts and prayers for lots of types of violence, right? Whether it's physical, sexual, I'm a sexual violence survivor, been so since I was like 4. And it's just really interesting to see, especially in spiritual communities, or even in the mainstream, because the mainstream likes to take a lot of spiritual, a lot of religious language. It's just interesting. I think it would be important for everyone at this point to think about, okay, when they're hoping for safety, for peace, like who's coming up in their prayers, and like what are you, if you are someone who believes in prayer, what is the
yeah.
nature of that prayer? Like, because I have in the past, when I've been angry about these issues, some people have told me, like, oh, like, give it to God. You don't have to take that burden, like have him take care of it. But I'm someone who believes that God put us on this earth so that he could work through us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Not everyone who's listening is going to believe in a higher power. You might really not have a good idea of God right now, and I totally understand if you feel that type of way about
Yeah.
whatever higher powers there are. But I'm just saying, if right now you are that person who believes in higher powers or a higher power, like, I guess, what are you asking for? And if you're asking for strength, it's like, strength to do what?
Mm-hmm.
I do know, and I know we have only a couple minutes left. I will say this, that you know there's been a lot of strong emotions, whether it's been about the racial climate, about COVID-19, and words that I hear a lot. And sometimes I see these workshops online where it's like, ooh, resilience, strength, people like, ways to, just ways to, I think we have to also, I think I'm seeing all these code words, right? Of like
Yeah.
grit, strength. And I think we really have to rethink what strength means in this context, because I think some people are trying to show their strength by like not crying, by not being emotional, because
Yeah.
they're trying to, I get it, you're trying to keep it together when you're at work, you're trying to keep it together if you have children or other family members that you feel like you need to be strong for. I mean, I'm not a parent, but like, there are certain people in my life that I feel like the need to like have more of a of a calm demeanor for. Um,
Yeah.
s-
Well,
and
that's
and it,
what
yeah,
they told when we started the pandemic. Like that was the advice that was being given to parents is what's really important is that you put on a face for your children that maybe you don't know what's going on, but that it's going to be okay. Like it's important for you. And that's all I could hear on NPR every time they had like a psychologist on to help parents coach their kids. It's like, be real with them and let them know that you don't know what's going on and what's going to happen, but like you have faith in the system that it's going to be okay.
And what if you don't have faith in the system? I mean, okay, so we have a couple minutes left. I guess.
Can I
Well,
close with one thing really, really? Okay, go ahead.
yeah, let's do so. No. Trust me, if I didn't
My
have,
husband
if I
tells
didn't
me
have
I
a
talk
meeting in a
over
few minutes, I
everyone,
would.
so I'm learning to not do that.
If I didn't have a meeting in a few minutes, I would like let this go on forever. But yeah, I guess like we've kind of bounced all over the place, but I guess that just started with the way this conversation even was with that news from my friend. So yes, when you hear news like that, your brain will go in so many different directions. But yes, I yeah, give me some of your final like either finish the thought you had and give some final thoughts, and I'll give mine.
So I think the biggest thing that hit me as we were kind of like nearing the end of this, and you're like, oh, I have to get back to work. I was like, first of all, what a luxury that we both have careers where we're able to take a lunch break, where we're able to get paid for that time too. I mean, well, I don't know. Technically, as a teacher, I get paid for, whatever. But I think it's a luxury that we're able to take this time to process, because I think so many people are in an economic situation at home right now where they don't have time to process because bills are not being paid. My bills are being paid, not just by my salary, but my husband's salary too. I have my insurance coverage, and also my insurance company decided to stop charging me copays. So I have free access to healthcare right now, which is nuts. I'm able to go to therapy every week for free. It's been wonderful. So I think my final thoughts for today, and there's a turkey in my yard right now. Holy cannoli. That was a great way to end this. Is that if you have the luxury, and again, it is a luxury, to have some free time, figure out how to use some of that free time to either educate yourself, reach out to someone who might need some support right now because they're exhausted and they need some support, and figure out something you can do in your neighborhood or with your family. Like, that's what I'm trying to do. And that's the only thing that's feeling productive for me. And again, the stupid idea of always having to be productive. But the more and more and more I reflect on this, I'm like, what a luxury. I'm sitting outside in my lovely yard looking at a turkey that if I wanted to kill for dinner, I probably legally could because I live in a state where I can do that. But yeah, just if you're praying for some guidance, like that's, figure out what that is and start doing it.
I mean, this is what I'll say too, because I know like you're trying to give people, oh yeah, I got less than 5 minutes. So
sorry.
Well, you know what? This is the state of America right now, like just the rushed Zoom call because you need to like take a bathroom break in between them. But in any case, I think it, you know how there's just the term acts of kindness, and then I see these, these images on social media where they say like kindness is a lifestyle. I do also feel the same way about this whole movement going on. I mean,
yeah.
I think that if you're someone who, and I think we both fall in this category where we were raised to be achievers, or we chose that for ourselves, where it's like, what's the checklist? What's the checklist? How do I get on the honors? How do I get into the young and gifted track of making sure that I'm doing everything I can for justice, for racial equality?
There's a Trevor Noah joke about this, isn't there?
I mean, yeah. So hold on. I don't know it, but we could look it up. But what I'm just trying to say is that I mean, I would say I would try to just approach this more as a lifestyle. And I mean, you might be like, Lindsay, what does that mean? I think we could talk about that more at another time.
Yeah.
We'll have more
yes,
free time.
That's a good topic.
But yes, I think especially if you're someone with an achiever mentality, the way you and I do, it could be so easy to just be like, donate to this, donate to that, do this protest, do that protest, create this mask that says Black Lives Matter or something like that. I don't know if that's actually being done. I wouldn't be surprised if it were.
Sure it is.
But yes.
And they'll be sold by a company that doesn't donate the money to Black Lives Matter.
Okay, well, that was not necessarily how I wanted to end this, but in this last minute, I do just want to say, you know, it's kind of like the difference between people like myself, like say if I'm to compare it to meditation, I'm that person who still has to think about it a lot more intentionally, and it's not really always comfortable with me versus say like a monk or someone who just does it so naturally that they don't really have to think about it. But
They've
I think
practiced it forever. They
because
practice it.
they
That's
started
their
with the
job.
intention. So yes, so my intention now, speaking of intentions, my intention is now to get back to my job so that you and I were talking about luxury. I want to continue to have whatever little luxury I have left so that I can
Yes.
feed myself and get cancer care. So that is my intention. It's good to see you again today, and I am just going to stop this recording, but it was
All
good
right.
to see
Love
you,
you.
and I love
Thank
you
you.
too. We'll chat more. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Okay. Hold on.